ready to begin, Cherish?
Yep, just a second. So we good to start?
Ready to go.
Perfect. Good evening. My name is Cherish, and I am one of the Oakville CPIC parent representatives. On behalf of CPIC, we would like to thank and welcome you to this evening's speaker event for parents and guardians of grade 7 to grade 10 to learn more about the Halton Catholic District School Board Math Achievement Action Plan and resources and support available to grade 7 and grade 10 students. The HCDSB 2023 and 2024 Math Achievement Plan demonstrates our commitment to provincial priorities while recognizing the unique needs of our communities to ensure a continued focus on high achievement in mathematics. Before I introduce the speakers, we will start with a prayer and the land acknowledgement. Let's begin with the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty and loving God, you have created us to love and to participate in the beauty of all creation. Give us the strength to do justice. May we walk with your Son, Jesus, in righteousness, working towards a world that celebrates the gift of all people and building a society rooted in your truth. Give us the courage to embrace those who are different from us and to actively work to be a voice of those who have been hurt and victimized. Fill our hearts to love kindness. May we imitate Jesus by showing compassion and forgiveness to our friends, families, and foes. And may we humble ourselves to ask for forgiveness when we need it. May the love of Jesus live within us and allow us to bring peace and kindness into our relationships. Share with us the grace to walk humbly with you, our God, recognizing all life as gifts, knowing that we have been loved into creation. Help us to live with a servant's heart and to trust in you always. We ask all this through Jesus, our friend and our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And then we'll just play the land acknowledgement.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect
the four directions:
lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God.
We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
So our speakers tonight are Superintendent Michael Skripik and his team of math consultants and itinerants, Andrea Turchett, Lisa O'Hara, and Isabella Sorrenti. Superintendent Skripik is a Catholic educational leader with more than 20 years of professional experience. He has served the Brant, Halamed, Norfolk Catholic District School Board for most of his career in a variety of roles, including teacher, system math teacher on the student achievement team, vice principal, and principal. He has also held the role of superintendent of education at provincial and demonstration school branch for the Ministry of Education. Superintendent Skripik has participated on a number of system level and provincial committees, including board principal lead for the implementation of the Ontario Elementary Math Curriculum. He is an expert reviewer for EQAO math assessment and a past member of the EQAO Accommodation and Review Committee. He has also shared his experience as a presenter at the Ontario of Mathematics Educators Conference. Tonight, Superintendent Skripik and his team of math consultants will provide information on EQA assessment and demonstration of essential tools, including Knowledge Check, Grade 9 EQAO, Caribou Math, and representation that work in mathematics. So let's welcome Superintendent Skripik and his team.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. Very honored to be here today and very honored to be the Superintendent of Education in the Halton Catholic District School Board. We've had a tremendous journey already to start this year, and we're looking forward to sharing with you some of the great things that are happening in this board and some of the ways that our math plan is coming alive in your classrooms with your kids, and talking about ways that you can support your own students and sometimes explaining just exactly what it is that we're trying to do here in mathematics. But we're going to start with a little bit of a warm up there. And if I could just move to the next slide. So I've included a QR code here. And the timer looks like it's only got 3 minutes and 59 seconds, but that's a little bit of an error. I just need to restart that. But we're going to give you 5 minutes. If you wanted to jump in to the website, you could use the link. You could use your phones to jump on with a QR code. The website will only give you 5 minutes to do this with. So jump on in and we'll be back in about 5 minutes, and the timer should be live and working for you at some point. Not quite sure what's happening there, but we promise it's going to be 5 minutes because that's all Caribou Math will give it to you unless your children are already registered. So we'll be back at about 7:16. I'll be here waiting anxiously and probably helping solve the problem on my own over here. We'll see you soon. We'll have about 1 minute left to go. And about 30 more seconds. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully that was exciting and fun for you. We'll talk about Caribou Math on our next slide here. So Caribou Math is a contest that we've introduced here in our board. It's run at a Brock University. It's an online math competition. It's available to all our students. So we have used some funding that the ministry provided us to increase the challenges for our students. We don't want it closed off to anybody. We want everybody to have access to it. So if you want access, you're more than and your kids haven't signed up at school yet, please ask your school administrator or your teacher and say, hey, I'd like to have access to Caribou Math. What it does for your child gives you access to all these types of fun games. It's not just a calacrostic, but there's plenty of them. And for those of you who remember the early 2000s or the late 90s, you may have spent your good amount of time playing Minesweeper, which is there. And there's a lot of fun chess games, math, chess puzzles. But they can also sign up to do previous math contests from previous years to get their practice in. And the fun part about the math practice questions that they give you, if you can't quite figure them out or your kids can't quite figure them out, they actually have live links to YouTube videos that actually show the solution. So we'd invite you to try that out anytime you want. But if you want the unlimited version and unlimited access to the games, because it won't cut you off after 5 minutes if you're signed up. So we'll just move to our next slide and talk about our math plan. So the Ministry of Education this year has asked that all boards create a math plan. And that math plan includes 3 main goals: to ensure fidelity of curriculum implementation, including the intentional use of high-impact instructional practices, engage in ongoing learning to strengthen mathematics, content knowledge for teaching, and to know the mathematics learner and ensuring mathematical tasks, interventions, and supports that are relevant and responsive. So in our next slide, we're going to be talking about that first goal. And here we've done a number of things already with our board. Many of these things are to help teachers out, but many of these things have a direct impact on how your students are learning and what they're learning. So when we talk about scope and sequence documents, those are the documents that we provide for teachers to kind of know what it is that they should be teaching from month to month. We leave it to professionals' teacher discretion to determine exactly what's being taught, but we do have some recommendations for teachers as to how we think the math program might roll out, and especially based on the resources that we've provided. Later on, you're going to learn about some of the digital diagnostic assessment tools that we have, and that is Knowledge Hook. You may have already heard about it a little bit if your kids are using it. If not, you'll get a chance to experience that. We've invested some time in the grade 7 and 8 program and some resource to purchase an additional textbook that's online, and that's called Mathology. And we've also provided training for teachers to implement that in their classroom. Principals play an active role in the implementation of curriculum in our school board. So some of the things principals might monitor, if you ever wonder, the ministry has an expectation that students in grades 7 and 8, for example, receive 300 minutes of instruction in mathematics a week. So we ask principals to check schedules and to talk to teachers about how they can help them implement that if there's any challenges. We also talk about moderated school sessions. So when we moderate, that means a group of teachers get together and they talk over some work. So they may have just written a test and they want to say, well, how do I make sure that this is aligned with how everybody else is marking in the school, or how everybody else is marking in the board? So sometimes we provide documents to say, well, this is what a grade 9 assessment should look like, or a grade 8. Why don't you get together and take a look at it and talk about what you know about the student learning, and what we should do next for the kids. So our next slide, we're going to talk about goal 2. And in goal 2, we've created something called the collaborative cross-panel concept study. So this is where we grab teachers from all across in a family of schools. So your child may go to one high school, and what we do is team them up with the high school teachers that they might be going to, and all the other elementary schools that feed into that family of schools. And they get together to talk about one specific area of math that they may find particularly challenging for students. You would be surprised maybe to know that fractions tends to come up quite a bit. So we're putting quite a bit of work this year into working together collaboratively with all the teachers in our board to talk about what it looks like to learn fractions, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and how it all applies into the work that we do into grade 10, 9, and 10 and beyond. We're doing the same thing with our grade 6 students in the area of multiplication. I myself, as a superintendent, lead sessions for principals on a regular basis, and I'm always available for consult. But then we also are making sure that we have PA days that are dedicated towards our mathematics. As an example, in November, we had teachers gather together. All the high school teachers were able to get together to talk about Knowledge Hook. We've also had a professional development session for elementary teachers to talk about a Knowledge Hook recently. And on the April 8th PA day, there'll be some more math conversations to be had in the schools. We're also working on the content sharing, and you're evidence of that right now. We're sharing with families what we're doing here in our board, because I'm sure you oftentimes have questions about what's going on, what kind of resources do we use, what does instruction look like for my child, and we're happy to be here right now to kind of share some of the great things happening. And lastly, on goal 3, we talk about knowing the mathematics learner. And here we talk about EQAO, and we actually in a collaboration with EQAO right now. We're in a collaboration with EQAO right now, where we're talking about different pieces of data that we might be able to use to help support further interventions into our classroom. EQAO is not just a test that we give kids to prove we're doing great, but it is a test that we really do ask kids to try really hard on, because we'd like to see what we're doing really well and what we need to keep working on. So ideas like our fractions collaborative cost panel, that information we get from EQAO is what we use in order to determine what we need to focus on for our learning. We then have schools. Schools will be identifying a topic focus. So we have things called student achievement plans. So every school creates an improvement plan and what do we want to work on. Our schools will pick a specific focus topic, like fractions. Sometimes it's integers. They may say it's multiplication. Maybe they'll look and say, you know, we're really struggling in probability. So that's how we that's what the purpose of that goal is. We've also got mathematics accelerated learning opportunities. That is what you just did, Caribou Math. We want to push students as much as we can and allow them to see just how great they could be in mathematics. Just know that Caribou is an international contest. We've had some students already in the top 20 of the world, which is fantastic. We have schools that are the tops in the world because of their participation rates, and we want to encourage people to continue doing that. I do have, as your superintendent, I do have a saying that I tend to use, that curriculum is the floor, not the ceiling for our kids. So we want to keep inspiring them to keep aiming higher and higher, even if they're achieving really well in school. We want them to do even better. We're working very carefully with our special education team. Should your child be struggling in mathematics, we also have plans in place to make sure that there's interventions. So in our grade 7 class, we used EQAO data to determine certain schools that we might focus on and support. But our spec ed team has been doing a phenomenal job too of finding resources that we could use to help support in an intervention way. And just to continue on goal 3 on our next slide, we have a collaboration with a national organization called AIM. in that we're trying to create a numeracy screener to help us identify kids who may need intervention work at a later stage in the early years. So we're talking kindergarten and grade 1. So we'll be meeting with folks in Ottawa very soon to talk about this program and coming to a few elementary schools near you in the next few months. We're also working hard to make sure that the resources we use are culturally relevant, and sometimes if we can't find resources to buy, we make our own. So as an example, we're very excited to share about the Benjamin Banneker resource that we created. Benjamin Banneker is a United States mathematician from the late 18th century. He was not educated in the area of mathematics, but taught it himself, and he created the first wooden clock that was operational in the United States until his house burnt down, which is an unfortunate reality of wooden clocks. But then he also accurately predicted the solar eclipse that happened in 1787, I believe. So very excited to be able to share that information with students and staff in the next little while, especially as we anticipate the coming solar eclipse on April the 8th. And sharing how Benjamin Banneker may have figured out when that's going to occur without a calculator. Last but not least, we do have secondary numeracy teams. So teams within schools gather together to talk about what they know about the information that they have about their students and what types of interventions and supports they might need, where they might need to focus more attention, and overall, how are things going. So that is the HCDSB, Halton Catholic District School Board Math Plan. This is posted on the board website, and we're happy to share that information with everybody. If you're ever wondering, what's going, and I can assure you that everything is going according to plan, thanks to the tremendous team that we have here. So we're going to move into Knowledge Hook now and share with you a new tool that we purchased this year for every student in the board and every school.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're really excited about the purchase of Knowledge Hook this year. Knowledge Hook is a digital tool that allows teachers to understand student learning need. It allows students to demonstrate their knowledge and receive intervention through short activities that are either live in class or self-paced activities that can be assigned to students to be completed during class time or even at home. And it's a tool that helps us as a system understand student learning need overall. There's an immense amount of data that we receive in terms of where students are seeing success in mathematics content areas and where students are experiencing some challenges and struggles and might need a little additional support. So it really helps us to plan the learning and respond as well. We're very excited to share Knowledge Hook live with you today. So we're going to try a game show, and I need to launch it right now. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to launch this game show. And my apologies. Once we launch the link, once I've finished launching this game show, you should be able to just put the class code in. The class code here is 491607, and you'll need to navigate to joinkh.com first. So navigate to joinkh.com, access the class code or enter the class code 491607. Once you click enter, you can choose to join as a guest. And for privacy reasons, Knowledge Hook always requires that we enter first name and last initial only, or just a first name, and then you can click join. So I am already seeing many students joining. This is great to see. I'll leave this for another minute while people join, just knowing that I can still see users actively joining. Oh, there's going to be a lot of math happening. I'm very excited. Okay. And we still have users joining. and it hasn't slowed down, so I'll just leave it for another moment. Okay, so it's slowing down now. I'm going to go ahead and click the play button. Oh, we're getting a few more. Okay, I'm going to start the play button now, and instructions will appear on screen for you to play the game show. We have nearly everybody locked in, so we'll give it another moment for everyone to answer their question. And almost everyone is there. So I will end the question in about 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the question and we'll be moving into the next question. 86% of our participants were correct. That's wonderful. Excellent work. We'll continue to the next question. So more than half of the class got it. Class win. So we have about half of our participants locked in. We'll leave this open for another minute. So these questions come from the grade 7, 8, and 9 curriculum. So this question is an example of a grade 8 question. So if you have a child in grade 8, this is one of the kinds of questions you could expect to see your child trying in Knowledge Hook. We're almost there. We're up to 65 participants. That's wonderful. And we'll end the question in about 10 seconds. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Excellent work on the question again. So this is our final question for the game show. So another question that has a lot of visual supports. Knowledge Hook does a wonderful job of providing a variety of supports and like visual supporting pieces alongside the text problems. And I see we're already getting answers coming in. This is an example of a problem a student might see who is currently enrolled in the grade 9 de-streamed math program. And we have almost everybody in. We'll give it another 10 seconds. Okay, we'll end the question now. And our final class score, we had 117 correct answers today. Wonderful work. Over 50% of the class was successful on this game show. And thank you so much for participating. We'll finish that game now. See you next time on Knowledge Hook is probably what it's saying there for you. So that's one example of a Knowledge Hook activity. Not everything in Knowledge Hook is live in those moments, but we hope to give you an opportunity today to enjoy just a little snip of what that might look like for students in the classroom. In addition to live activities, Knowledge Hook provides options to assign missions. And so teachers may also assign activities that aren't live with the classroom. Should your child receive an activity at home, they can go ahead and complete that. But what I often hear from teachers and students is that students who are using Knowledge Hook to access their missions are finding that they're really enjoying the opportunity to practice math in this way, and they'd like to do a little bit more on their own. So Knowledge Hook, in addition to providing the game shows and missions, which are directed by the teachers, Knowledge Hook also provides something called a mathalon that students can work towards at their own pace. The mathalon provides additional opportunities for students to practice and build math skills, and they don't need to have those activities assigned to them by their teacher in order to be able to access them. So if a student would like to access the mathalon, when they join kh.com, so when they join Knowledge Hook at joinkh.com, enter their class code, select their name and enter their password that's been provided to them by their classroom teacher, they would be directed to the main screen. And at the bottom of the Knowledge Hook screen would appear this little task bar or nav bar, and they would land initially on the main page. If a student would like to keep working through activities because they're really enjoying their experience with Knowledge Hook, then they can go ahead and click the Solve button where there's a star. And once they click the Solve button and the star, they can choose a topic area to begin working, and they'll see a display of a whole series of numbered activities that they can work on at their own pace to begin working towards the mathalon. The mathalon also features a half mathalon. So if a student gets halfway through those activities, they can celebrate with a half mathalon. And if they finish all of the activities by the end of the school year, then they'll complete the mathalon as well. So we'll move forward with EQAO.
Thank you, Andrea. And those Knowledge Hook game shows are always fun. So we're going to get into EQAO. Michael already mentioned EQAO, and we know that EQAO has been assessing students in Ontario since the late 1990s. And students in publicly funded schools in Ontario write EQAO assessments in mathematics 3 times. So they write a grade 3 assessment, a grade 6, and grade 9. And EQAO assessments provide data to not only school boards, but to schools to allow them to see student learning strengths and needs, and they analyze the data and determine where we can improve. The assessment was originally designed in print, but the current assessments are now digital. Okay, so we're going to try a sample EQAO assessment, we're going to give you about 10 minutes to work through some of these problems. Normally, the students in grade 9 have 2 sections of math that are an hour each, but we're just going to do the sample test for right now. So if you want to use the QR code, you can go ahead and scan that, or the link, the bit.ly is provided there for you. And we're going to give you about 10 minutes to work through some of the problems that the grade 9 students would be working on in EQAO.
So just at this time, if you wanted to access the link, we'll be back in 10 minutes. I'll have a timer maybe right here for everybody to see.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes remaining. And we have just less than a minute. Okay, and that's our 10 minutes. So for those of you that were able to log on to the EQAO website, thank you so much for trying some of those sample questions so you can get a feel for what our grade 9 students will be experiencing when it comes time for them to write EQAO.
So we're going to talk about representations that work in mathematics. We are doing quite a bit of work in the area of multiplication with our younger students, but I want to assure you that some of the work that we do with our younger students also has quite a bit to say about how things work out in grade 10. In fact, I'm going to go through a little bit of an exercise with you in the next few minutes, kind of talk about one that we know really works well. So the Ministry of Education created a book called The High Impact Instructional Practices in Mathematics, available for everybody to download for your own reading pleasure. And they've shared some important information. And a lot of this is a continuation of the work that we've been doing even before this 2020 math curriculum came out. We know that the use of tools and representation supports a conceptual understanding of mathematics at all grades. So when we talk about conceptual understanding, that's knowing how it works. So it's kind of like, you can get in your car and it works just by turning on the engine. And that's great for a procedural understanding. But for conceptual understanding, we want the kids to actually know why that motor's working. And I know that it's not as sometimes math isn't that complicated, but those of you who did some of that EQEO work, I'm sure you're thinking, wow, it's been a while since you had to challenge yourselves like that. We know that what really drives students' conceptual understanding is a visual image. And I kind of share with people that if I was speaking in another language right now, one that most people wouldn't understand, it wouldn't make much sense to you. And I happen to speak a few, but it really does make a lot of sense. And this is how we learned as children. The language starts to make more sense when the visual image is applied. So if I use a different word for dog, but you didn't know what a dog was until somebody showed you the picture, and then you could kind of bring the two ideas together. And that's what we're doing for your children every day. We're taking visual images and converting them into what the math does. So we're going to now go through a little bit of an exercise where I'm going to show you just how powerful those visual images are. And first, we're going to start with a video by a renowned mathematics researcher named Joe Bowler. So Joe Bowler there walked us through a little bit of a process, and I'm hoping in seeing that you kind of see just how powerful those visual images are. And I'm going to kind of show you how we develop that with students. But before I go there, I just want to reassure everybody, yes, we definitely want your kids to know their times tables. And yes, we definitely want them to be able to solve them in their head. But I always want to add the extra challenge of while we understand memorization is a critical component in mathematics, it might not help your kids solve double digit by double digit math. And so what we're really trying to do is to get your students in the moment to be able to solve not just 9 times 9, but 99 times 9 and 999 times 9. And there's a lot of fun strategies that we use to teach them this. And a lot of them are rooted in helping them see exactly what's happening with the mathematics. So we use visual representations. So this is why we use something called an array model sometimes in multiplication. So our next slide is going to show us a visual representation that we might use in the earlier grades. Might be a little overwhelming at first, and you might be remembering days when somebody said just, take how much is across and down and multiply them together. But that's not really what we want kids to do, is just to see the image and say, well, I just multiply. We want them to work with these numbers just like Joe Bowler did. And I mean, I'm not going to challenge you too much, but I could tell you the one thing we really wouldn't want kids to do is to count all the circles. So we know this is a challenging image. And especially when the numbers get big. So we start doing something more. And as they move into the junior ranks, in our next slide, we're going to show you something that we do with our kids. And that's we change things into a grid. Makes it a little bit easier to work with and allows them to not have to draw every single circle. So the circles are great when we're dealing with something like 2 times 3 equals 6 or 5 times 4 equals 20. But when we get to something like 11 times 12, it's a little bit harder to visualize that. And so it's not just what we want them to do. So if you're really lucky, you get a computer that can count them all out, as we show on the next slide. But that's not what we want students to do either. We don't want them to count every square. We want them to definitely start seeing this as a tool that they could use to figure out the multiplication. So students may be encouraged on the next slide to start dividing it up like Joe Bowler did. So we might say, well, I'm not quite sure what 11 times 12 is, but if I start breaking apart our numbers a little bit, I might actually see how to do this. So on our next slide, I kind of did the work for you this time. Now we divided it up so it's we now have a square that is 10 by 10. We now have a rectangle over to the side that's 1 by 10. We have the bottom rectangle that's a little bit bigger, that's 2 by 10, and the next one that's 2 by 1. So in our next slide, I kind of show you what we do with this. So then we kind of do the multiplication with the kids. Say, okay, well, multiply these. So we know we have a square that's 10 by 10, and that's a pretty easy number to multiply out. That's 100. And then over there on the right, we know that 1 times 10 is 10, and 2 times 10 is 20, and 2 times 1 is 2. And don't worry, we spend quite a bit of time walking kids through this process. We don't just show them this image and say, now figure it out. We start with smaller numbers and we move a little bit bigger, and we use grids because they're easier to use at this time. So you can kind of see once when we have the area of each of these little numbers, these little things that we broke it into, we can now add them all up and we end up with the number 132. We also use this visual image to help students understand how to multiply using a standard algorithm. And yes, we still do that too. It's all part of the math curriculum. But we do something more with this. And why this is so important, why I'm talking about junior math, because then we kind of take away the squares. So on our next slide, I kind of show you, well, now we don't need, maybe we develop the kids enough at this point that we don't need to see the squares inside. At first we do, but now we're like, how about we just play with the numbers as it is? And you could just start breaking apart this rectangle into whatever ways you want in order to make sense. As you noticed in Joe Bowler, you could take 12 times 11. You could think about it as 11 times 6 plus 11 times 6, which gets you 66 plus 66. Still gets the same answer. You could think of it as 12 times 10 plus 12 times 1. You don't need to break up the other number. All of these are very valid ways. And these are ways, and ultimately, yes, again, I will tell you that we still want your child in about 3 seconds or less by the time they're in grade 9 to kind of think about what 12 times 11 is and not have to think about it too much. But as they start learning these multiplication tables, we want them to develop a deeper understanding, kind of like I said, looking under the hood and seeing how the engine really works. And these visuals really do have an impact on how your children learn. Moving forward, we now take it to another level. So welcome to grade 10. Hold on to your hats. We've done this before. You just might not remember it. What if we thought about 10 plus 1, which is 11, times 10 plus 2, which is 12. But now we're actually going to not think about it that way. We're going to say, instead of 10, let's call it x. So now we have x plus 1 times x plus 2. And some of you may be remembering some of this. Some of you may remember a teacher teaching you an acronym called FOIL, which is to multiply the first outside, inside, last. But we kind of want to start with a visual image to kind of help students understand what that looks like. So we do exactly the same thing that we did with 11 times 12, and we'll show you an image of what that looks like on the next slide. So here we are. This might look familiar because this is the exact same image that we had when it was 11 times 12, only now we're using x's and the numbers. So you can see, and if you remember this from your grade 8 math lessons, you might remember when you have two x's multiplied together, no, you don't end up with 2x, you actually end up with x squared. Adding 2x, I'll show you what happens when you add the two x's together instead. And then you have 1 times x, which is just, you have 1x. Then you have two x's, we'll call that 2x. And then you multiply 2 times 1, you end up with 2. On our next slide, we do the exact same thing that we normally would do when we have numbers, except now, oh, one too many. But now we have these letters there, which always is confusing to people why you add letters to math. It's already confusing enough with the numbers, I'm sure. But here we have x squared plus 2x plus x plus 2. And we can add those x's together. 2x plus x, we know we have 3x. So there's a lot of grade 10 math happening here, and you can be proud of yourselves if you all figured it out. Because this is what we call a quadratic equation. We factored out a quadratic. We've also shown how you complete a square. All things that are very important for later math. Those of you who might not remember what a quadratic is, you might remember what the graph looks like. It's that little curve that goes up and down, and you would have measured, you know, if you're throwing a ball, the distance that the ball might travel on its way up and on its way down. Those are all things that are rooted in this basic formula. So I'm happy to share that this is the type of work that we're trying to encourage. Students in grade 10 would probably be using algebra tiles, we call them. So they actually physically would work with these things. But eventually, and I will tell you again, exactly how you learned it in school, we do get to, you know, doing other ways of doing this. We want to always start is with the image, or we start with the math and then we kind of show the image to explain why the math works. But we always want the kids to be able to open that hood and look underneath the car and see why the engine works the way it does. So it's not just I turned on the car and I drove and it broke down and I don't know why. We want kids to be able to kind of work with these things, experiment with them, and eventually come to some truths. So kind of think of math class as more of a science class where kids are experimenting, but we still want them to get the answers right. We still want them to understand the mathematics behind it. But eventually we want them to carry these things forward to other math. So that is a quick turnaround on what we do in junior math all the way into grade 10 intermediate. Now I'll cede the floor to Andrea, and she'll talk about how you can play a role in the mathematics for your children.
Well, educators have known for a very long time how critical parents are to as partners in your child's education. And with the most recent iteration of the curriculum documents in 2020, the new documents were released. We were really excited to see a specific section on the roles and responsibilities of both parents and students in mathematics education. So the first portion of that section really focuses on the importance of parents working with schools to provide that supportive framework that helps our students and your child become basically mathematicians. So we know that your engagement and your commitment to your child's success, your communication with classroom teachers in the school, and helping to foster those positive attitudes towards math, Those are so important for our students to, as they work towards mathematics success in kindergarten to grade 12 and in the future as well. The Ministry of Education also provides some suggestions for how parents can support their children in seeing mathematics success. And these include things, but simple things such as just showing an interest in what children are learning, discovering with children how what is being learned in class can be applied to everyday context. So seeing math in the world around us every single day, having conversations about that, sharing what we notice and wonder about mathematics in the world around us are all wonderful ways in which parents and guardians support children in becoming more and more successful every day in mathematics. In addition to this, there's I think something that might sound familiar is the practicing of new skills and concepts and supporting students through that at home, applying new math learning to experiences at home and connecting math experiences at home to the learning at school, which can include, of course, your own experiences in learning mathematics and ways in which you have learned how to approach problems. Parents are an integral part of their children's interactions and experiences with math. And one of the most important things that parents can do is have a positive attitude towards mathematics. Mathematics historically has a bit of a bad reputation in some ways, in the sense that it was commonplace and can be still to not identify as a mathematics learner or a mathematics person. And so what we do see as educators and what the Ministry of Education has underscored is that helping our children develop a positive attitude towards mathematics by demonstrating positive mathematics attitudes ourselves helps develop that self-efficacy for all students and helps students to overall identify positively as doers of math and capable in mathematics. When parents show a love of mathematics and an interest in mathematics, their children see that mathematics is enjoyable, they see it as worthwhile, and they see it as valuable. And when students are struggling through mathematics problems, particularly challenging mathematics problems at home, when parents and guardians encourage their children to cultivate that perseverance by encouraging them to keep trying, to embrace mistakes as learning opportunities, and to try different approaches, perhaps try different representations to help make sense of the problem. This really does help support students in believing that they can succeed in math and help work towards that goal of building their self-confidence and sense of identity as a doer and learner of mathematics. So we'll continue on with sharing some of the resources that we have available to us in the intermediate levels at HCDSB.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa O'Hara, and I am the numeracy and STEAM itinerant for secondary. Tonight, I've been asked to inform you of the math resources our grade 7 and 8 teachers in elementary are using, and our grade 9 and 10 teachers are using in their high school classrooms. You'll see the logos on the screen for Mathology and Math Up, and that is being used at the grade 7 and 8 level. And at this time, it's a digital resource, a digital textbook. On the next screen, these are the resources that your grade 9 and 10 teachers are using in the secondary classroom. So we've got MathSpace, Math Up, and LearnX. And LearnX is a supplementary resource with a heavy emphasis on coding.
So I just want to thank everybody again. Your presence here and you watching this this presentation is a definite show of force for your commitment towards your child's learning in mathematics and your support of our efforts to ensure their success. We're always working hard to take feedback to ensure that we're doing the best that we can for your students. We tend to use quite a bit of data. So for instance, when you do Knowledge Hook, when teachers are doing those types of activities, there's actually data that's being collected on the back end by Knowledge Hook that's being shared with your classroom teacher to understand what your child knows and what they need to know next and how they might do better. And sometimes what we know from research, a gamified version that happens on a regular basis, small little assessments like that are really great for your kid and give the teacher just enough feedback that they know they do that for the next day. But then on a bigger scale, we use things like EQAO to kind of help us understand how are we doing as a school board and what do we do next, which then drives the professional development to do with teachers and determines the types of resources we may have. Like the great people here, like Isabella and Lisa and Andrea, they're here because we know that there's certain areas of math that we want to continue to work with. They go out in the field, and when we talked about something like the cross-panel studies, they're helping teachers learn this material themselves. Sometimes they go out in the field and help teachers with learning how to use the resources. And other times they're doing awesome things like working with us here on behalf of CPIC. So we're leaving this last slide open for you to kind of take a look at to know how to access some of these resources. The ministry has produced some great resources as well. And we also want to put a plug in for TVO Learn Mathify, which is a great place to go to for your child to get help. The ministry provides free tutoring online or over the phone. You can give them a call and set up a tutoring session for your child. I just want to put a plug in that all schools have some access to tutoring as well right now. We've teamed up with Halton Black Voices and the Center for Diverse Learners to provide some tutoring supports for some of our kids that are from equity observing groups. But we want you to know that those supports are available too. I know certain high schools do learning sessions during lunchtime and after hours, which we would encourage you to take advantage of. And then not to mention just to give your child's teacher a call sometimes and say, you know, I'd like to talk to you about how things are going for my kid in math. But I'm happy to take some questions now as we come to the conclusion of the session.
So there's a hand up. You can either type your message or your question in the chat, or if you want to just unmute your mic, you can also ask your question that way.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. Do you guys have, I guess, resources to retrain the teachers with the new math up and Mathology and all those other resources? Are the teachers trained on how to teach math?
So yes, for example, this year with Mathology, that training was provided in September, October for grade 7 and 8 teachers. And as I mentioned with Knowledge Hook, in November and February, we had professional development sessions on Knowledge Hook and how that could be incorporated into the classroom. And on top of that, the other professional development that we provide, we always make sure that it includes the resources that we're providing and asking teachers to use in the classroom. So we try not to deviate too much from what they're doing in the classroom on a regular basis and what we're asking. So we always have a plan to make sure that when we do introduce a new resource, that there's support provided for teachers. I can tell you that with certain resources, there was a little bit of a harder start to that because we did start this new math curriculum. I don't like to use the word too much, but during COVID, that's when the new curriculum came out and some of these resources came out. So we did make sure that we provided as much support as we could, but knowing that it was a little bit harder during that time. So I noticed that there's some questions over here in the chat. Yes, all the tools will be available during the summer. Knowledge Hook will continue to be available for your children. And Caribou Math, that license will continue to carry forward if your child signed up for it up until August. As for the textbooks, I believe the textbooks are usually provided by the teachers, like they have access to the online resource, so there won't be anything there, but TVO Mathify will be available as well. I'm not sure about the answer to the question about the email to participants, but I'm sure that it will be shared in some way, shape, or form because it was recorded. So I'm happy to share it. And are we continuing to use Math Makes Sense textbooks? So the answer is to an extent, possibly yes. I'm trying to answer the question as best as I can, though. So Mathology is an extension of what Math Makes Sense was and continues to carry all the lessons that I noticed that I used to teach, because I taught it at Math Makes Sense as a teacher in grade 7 and 8. So Mathology continues that. Now, if a teacher's still using Math Makes Sense, there are certain lessons in there that would still be relevant to the curriculum, but the caution we always say about this is it has to be part of the curriculum that was rewritten. So we can't be it's the Ontario government, the rule book is, and there's a link to the Ontario curriculum there for you. So the rule book for us as teachers and educators in the system is the curriculum. So we can always use resources that kind of include certain parts of the curriculum, but we just can't use the entire one anymore because certain lessons no longer are part of what used to be taught. And other lessons aren't included in the textbook. So if we used it only for that, your children might not get the same level of curriculum that the government wants us to teach. And yes, Halton does support students in preparing and participating in tests like Gauss. I would say that I'm working together with a few teams, and it will be available to students this year in May for grade 7 and 8. In our high schools, the University of Waterloo Math Contest is supported and has been implemented. I know that students were rating it in the last week or two. I don't want to reveal the name of one of the administrators, but one of the administrators in our board actually helps write the University of Waterloo math questions and helps do the assessment. So it's a humbling honor. And actually, I'd be remiss not to add that we have a Fields Medalist Award winner for his work on math contests, and that is, and I can't remember Mario's last name, but he is the teacher out of Assumption. And he won an award for his work that he did with math contests in the last little while. As I said, I think our curriculum is a fantastic curriculum in Ontario. It's internationally recognized, but I see that as just the beginning for our kids, and I want to see them really excelling in those math contests, given a great opportunity to show for those ones that are able to do what they can do. In terms of prepping for contests, you probably want to get in touch with your classroom teacher to ask them for that. We'll be getting grade 7, 8 teachers ready in the next little while for the implementation of that. One thing I would recommend, as a parent myself, I have a grade 9 child, and I may or may not have spent many times working on math contests with this child, and he may or may not have been too happy all the time. But I go on the University of Waterloo Math Contest pages because you can go online and you can download those tests, as many as you want. In fact, you can download for the last 15 years. And the nice part is they also provide the solutions, and the solutions just aren't the answers, but they actually give a written description of how the solution might come out. So that is something that I've done with my own kids, where I'd ask them to write the test and we'll look over the questions and take a look at which ones they got right and take a look at which ones they didn't, and how we could what we could learn from that. Because I think that's the most important part about it all, is to treat it like, oh, and Andrea's already provided the link for us, to treat it like a learning opportunity all the time.
I think there's also one more hand up, or I don't know if it was there from earlier.
Go ahead, caller.
If you wanted to go ahead, there's somebody who raised their hand.
Someone on the phone.
If you're calling us from your phone, you're welcome to ask your question. As we kind of work through that, I noticed that there's another question. If you didn't get a response on the online math tutoring, please let me know. We might be able to connect you in a different way or find out what kind of supports we might have here at the board level. So please just reach out to your local administrator. I'm not sure what school you're coming from or which region, but your vice principal or principal might be able to help out, or classroom teacher, and just have them reach out to me and we'll see what we can do. Oh, I see our callers trying again. Go ahead. Your phone might be on mute because of Teams, so you may just need to unmute something. Okay, well, on behalf of the team that came here to present today, I just want to thank everybody again for coming here. I hope you found the presentation interactive and supportive. Our intent today was to make sure that you were exposed to as many different things that are happening in your kids' classroom. I can tell you that there's a lot going on a regular basis, and there's a lot of support out there for the teachers and the students. Please just remember some of the comments that we had there from the ministry. As a parent, please always make math as fun as possible. Treat it like a learning journey, and always think about the challenges that your kid might be facing, but know that they're challenges that can be overcome. And we're always here to support. We're happy to answer any questions on a regular basis, all the staff and teachers. I'm very, very proud to be part of the Halton Catholic District School Board, because I've always known it to have some tremendously effective teachers and produce some tremendously effective students. And that couldn't happen without the support of you, the parents. So I'll pass the floor over back to our chair.
Well, thank you, Superintendent Skrbek and team, for sharing this information with us tonight. Thank you to you online for joining us this evening. Our next parent engagement event will be on Thursday, March 21 at 7 p.m. for parents and guardians of grade 1 to grade 6 to learn more about the HCDSB math achievement plans for those grades, and also resources and supports available to grade 1s to grade 6. The session will be hybrid for those interested to attend in person. It will be at Our Lady of Fatima Elementary School in Milton. And for those who are interested to attend virtually, there will be a link that will be also sent out. More details to come in the next couple of weeks for this math session, so look out for the email registration to register. We have also partnered with the Halton region to provide information and support to parents on vaping. The parent engagement speaker event will be on Thursday, May 2nd. Again, more information will be emailed out in April. CPIC is always looking for feedback or suggestions from the community on topics parents and guardians are interested in. If you have any questions or if you have an idea for a future speaker event, let us know. Submit your suggestions to CPIC. Our email address is cpic@hcdsb.org. Also, you can follow us on social media. We are on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Have a good evening, and we look forward to seeing you at our next CPIC event.
And I would like to say a big thank you to Carrie and Ryan, our American Sign Language interpreters, for this evening. Thank you very much.